I will call the City Council meeting to order, and would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Maybe pay attention when these discussions.
And we are looking for an approval of our agenda this evening.
Mayor, I'd move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, the agenda has been a motion to approve, and it has been seconded. Is there any additions or any amendments to the agenda, though? If not, we will be voting on that. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We will move on. We are to our first citizen comment section. And if there's anyone who wishes to comment, this is for items that are on our agenda. So Jerry, do you have anything to say at the beginning? No? Okay. With that, we will move on to the consent agenda.
Mayor, move to the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Second?
The consent agenda there's a motion and to approve the consent agenda, and it has been seconded. Is there any questions or comments on the consent agenda?
Just a point of clarification. Did we vote on the agenda? I know we had the motion, but I slept through the vote, sorry.
You did. You did. You voted affirmative.
I did, thank you.
Yes. Okay, we will vote on the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye, including Councilman Clausen.
I voted.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Fine, we will move on then. We have no presentations this evening. We do have a public hearing on vacating city right-of-way, an alley between Klein Avenue and DeKalb Street. Clerk Reinerson, that's your agenda item.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Council. Petitioner Ming Chao Tran, owner of 314-316 Klein Avenue, submitted a petition to vacate city right-of-way. The right-of-way is an alley between Klein Avenue and DeKalb Street and is adjacent to her parcel. The area to be vacated is approximately 2,421 square feet. This vacation is at the request of the city's code enforcement officer to clean up the encroachment on the city's right-of-way. Once this has been vacated, the petitioner can move forward with the repairs to a deck that is rotting. The adjacent property owners, Harold and Shirley Valist and Sue Ann Martin Smith, who together with the petitioner own more than 2/3 of the abutting property, have signed the petition and as required by RCW 3579010 and Port Orchard Municipal Code 12.08.010. At the August 22nd Land Use Committee meeting, the committee and staff expressed support of the vacation. However, they prefer the remainder of the alley be vacated with this vacation. This would be approximately additional 120 feet length of right-of-way for an additional approximate 1,190 square feet. On October 8th, the council adopted Resolution 35-19, setting a public hearing on this petition to vacate the city right-of-way. On October 11th, the city posted the required public notice in a conspicuous place in the alley sought to be vacated. And on October 21st, placed a copy of the adopted resolution in 3 of the most public places in the city, one being at the City Hall Bulletin Board, 2 at the Kitsap County Administrative Building Bulletin Board, and at the Port Orchard Library Bulletin Board. In addition, on October 21st, the city mailed letters notifying the budding property owners of the petition and the public hearing. These actions met the required posting and noticing requirements outlined in RCW 35.79.020 and Port Orchard Municipal Code 12.08.020. As of today, staff has not received any written objections to this proposed vacation. Pursuant to RCW 35.79.020 and Port Orchard Municipal Code 12.08.30 subsection 1, the council is prohibited from proceeding with public hearing if 50% of the budding property owners filed written objection to the proposed vacation with the clerk prior to the time of the hearing. Therefore, with no written objections, the council shall proceed with the public hearing. With that, staff recommends that the mayor pro tem open the public hearing.
The public hearing on the vacating city right-of-way and alley between Klein Avenue and DeKalb Street is open. We have no one signed up to testify at the public hearing, but we will offer that to anyone in attendance. If you would like to testify at the public hearing, please come to the podium and state your name.
Heidi Fenton, and I was just curious. I meant to go down because I think it involves Bliss, their property too, the auto people. So I just didn't understand it, and when it was on the map a couple weeks ago, I still didn't get it because it was up there for kind of short time. So let's just say I'm going up Klein, and then there's DeKalb to the right and DeKalb to my left. Are you guys talking about just that dead end to the left?
No, if you,
There it is.
yeah, it's up there, but if you were in the Bliss sales lot.
Right.
And there's that fence up on the hill,
Mm-hmm.
it's the alley directly behind that.
Oh, so it's not that road where all the businesses are.
No,
It's the alley where
you
those.
can't tell that it's an alley.
Not a functioning.
It's
Oh, wait
not
a minute, so-
functioning area. It's the area behind the fence.
Uh-huh. Now, how come those people aren't here tonight? I'm just curious. Who's doing all this? The people that
We
want all
can't-
that?
They have all received notification, so we
Oh.
can't speak to why they're
I'm just
here.
curious, because you're voting on it tonight, right? Okay, so I just didn't know why those people wouldn't be here. Okay, so it's just an alley, and she just wants that alley to be hers so she can build. Is that correct? Well, I live on an alley too, and I'm on DeKalb, so must be the
I
alley.
think what we need,
Is there an,
this is not
we
a
show this map?
conversational.
Yeah, can I see that? I mean, I'm sure it's like no big deal. I'm just trying to understand it, that's all. Because then if I understand it for the future, if something else, comes up just like this, then I can, I understand it. And it's like, oh yeah, they already did this on this area. Maybe you can be able to do this too. That's all. Because the city's giving it up, right? To
When
her.
Right, and we appreciate your testimony and your comments at the public hearing. But I think many of your questions will be answered when we get to the agenda item.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so your question should be answered then. This particular time is not a dialogue time.
Oh, okay. Well, I just thought I had a question. I didn't understand it. So that was my public, asking about
Right.
it. Okay, thank you.
We'll want to make sure that we clearly let her know where it's at in the process. Sue Ann, if you would like to speak, again, state your name, please.
My name is Sue Ann Martin Smith, and I am one of the property owners that we're talking about, and I am,
Do you mind putting the microphone up just? There we go.
it's very
thank you.
dramatic. I am one of the property owners, actually, and I am for it. The alley behind my property, nothing has been done with it. Dick Bliss would be nice enough to hire someone to kind of groom it. But other than that, there's really been nothing to it. No one's taking care of it. We take care of it on our end, on kind of the city's property. We do that part, and he does the other. So we're the ones already taking care of it. We don't mind it. If the city wants to give it up, we'll take it. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry, if you would like to step up.
Jerry Harmon. Okay, just from what I've heard, if the city is giving it up, does that mean the city is being paid for this property? Because I thought when you vacated that people had to pay to get it back in their So that's what I would like to know, because I have a street between me, but I was given a pretty high price for if I wanted the property. So I guess that's a question I would like to know.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at the public hearing on the vacation of the alley? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing on vacating the city right-of-way, the alley between Klein and DeKalb Street. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We will move on. We have a second public hearing, and that is on 2019 Comprehensive Plan Amendments. Mr. Bond?
Yes, thank you. On the agenda tonight is the 2019 Comprehensive Plan Amendments. Normally, we hold only one hearing on the Comprehensive Plan Amendments for the annual amendment cycle. This year, that was done in June before the Planning Commission. However, the code does provide that if there are any revisions to the Comprehensive Plan Amendments as recommended by the Planning Commission, that the council may also hold an additional hearing to see if there's any public testimony on those changes. The changes that have been made since the Planning Commission saw this are made because the Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council has asked the planning directors from Kitsap County to work on countywide planning policies, and we have been hard at work on our centers policies. And because of that, and because of the changes that I believe that the KRCC will be voting on soon, we wanted to make sure that our centers element of our land use plan match that which is going to be in the countywide planning policy. So this is sort of a preemptive adoption. Additionally, as we went through the budget earlier this, I guess last month, we realized that there were some inconsistencies between the budget that we were proposing to amend and our 6- and 20-year transportation plan that had been reviewed back in June. And so we updated the 6-year transportation plan. Most notably, we shifted the Anderson Hill Old Clifton Roundabout out another 2 years because that's not going to be funded as part of the 2020 budget cycle. Additionally, the Land Use Committee recommended that for each of our designated centers, we include a center's map in the element that talks about what that center is and where it is located. And finally, we introduced the discussion of a possible combined downtown and county campus center as a candidate for a regional center designation under PSRC. And what we had to do some analysis with PSRC earlier as part of the Vision 2050 update, which is our next regional plan. And when they ran the activity units, which is a combination of population and jobs within a geographic area, we learned that the county campus and downtown together would be eligible as a regional center, which could mean more transportation funding becomes available to Port Orchard. So the first step in exploring the possibility of being a regional center is to identify in your comprehensive plan that desire, and that's what we have done here. So the three amendments, the three broad categories of amendment that are before you tonight, we are updating the 6-year and 20-year transportation improvement programs. We are adopting the Bethel-Sedgwick Corridor Plan that was completed last year, but which is not yet officially in our comprehensive plan, and that is unchanged from what the Planning Commission saw in June. And then we have updated the land use element concerning our designated centers. With that, the staff recommendation is to hold a public hearing on the 2019 comprehensive plan amendments. Thank you.
Okay, with that, the public hearing for the 2019 Comprehensive Plan Amendments is open. And again, no one signed up to speak, but we will offer to the audience if anyone would like to speak at the public hearing for the Comprehensive Plan Amendments. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing on the 2019 Comprehensive Plan Amendments.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to close the public hearing on the Comprehensive Plan Amendments. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say no. All right, we will move on to our business item, 7A, which is the adoption of an ordinance approving the petition to vacate the city right-of-way, an alley between Klein Avenue and DeKalb. And getting to my appropriate place, Brandy, I believe that is you.
Evening, there was a public hearing held to take testimony on whether the council should vacate city right-of-way, an alley between Klein Avenue and DeKalb Street. Staff has determined the following with regards to the proposed street vacation. The area sought to be vacated was dedicated to the city in 1886 as part of the S.M. Stevens Town Plat of Sydney. To date, the city has not opened the right-of-way. The city engineer has reviewed the street vacation petition and has indicated the following. The area sought to be vacated is not needed for public travel now or in the foreseeable future. The functionality of the area sought to be vacated for public purposes is non-existent. Portions of the abutting property owners' improvements are encroaching into the area. The vacation of the area would not adversely affect any city utilities, such as water, sewer, or storm. And the city has not included any projects within its proposed vacation area as part of its 6-year road plan, nor has the city any scheduled capital facilities projects on this property. The Community Development Director stated the following. Vacations of the proposed areas do not create potential or actual land uses that are inconsistent with the city's growth plans and goals. This area has not been identified in the city's comprehensive plan. This vacation is at the request of the city's code enforcement officer, as the house has unpermitted additions of unknown age, house built in 1891, additions much more recent, that occupy almost the entire width of the unopened right-of-way. The vacation would be the first step in cleaning up the encroachment on the city's right-of-way and neighboring property. Legal counsel's comments. Although the vacation would not resolve the issue of the structure being on the adjacent property owner's property, it is the best course of action for the city to proceed with the street vacation process. This would be the first step before the property owners can proceed with any negotiations and/or civil actions relating to the encroachment. If the owners of the underlying property want to proceed with steps to resolve the encroachment issue, such actions would be civil matters between the two of them. It would not require legal involvement of the city. Land Use Committee requests that the remainder of the alley be vacated with this vacation. This would be approximately an additional 120 feet length of right-of-way for an additional approximate of 1,190 square feet. So just for a point of clarification, so this map here, we're going to vacate, the petitioners requested to vacate this piece here all the way to a straight line here. And then the city's land use committee is recommending that we take this piece here and vacate all the way down here. So this is all vacated. The fiscal impact is yet to be determined, as once the council approves of the street vacation, then the petitioner will need to provide an appraisal of the property, and then at that point, they will be required to pay the city 50% of that. With that, based on the report provided to the council, staff recommends approving the street vacation as presented.
Thank you. Because we did have some questions during public comment, I was wondering if Mr. Dorsey could address some of those.
Yeah, I think the most important thing that we need to address is the concept of unopened right-of-way versus opened right-of-way. Unopened right-of-way, each adjacent property owner has a fee simple ownership of each half of that right-of-way. So until the road or the right-of-way is actually open for pedestrian use, each one of the adjacent owners has a fee simple ownership and maintenance. So the city doesn't maintain an open right-of-way. If there was a tree that needed to be cut down, we would determine which side of the line that tree's on, and that property owner would have to take that tree down. So I think the concept of opened right-of-way versus unopened right-of-way is very important in this process. And this is clearly unopened, unusable property that's currently fee simple owned by each adjoining owner. What we're doing by approving this vacation and going through the appraisal process and having those properties purchased is that we're simply removing the future pedestrian and public use of that right-of-way in the future.
Thank you. Trying again to answer the questions, the property is appraised, that is vacated, and then once and help me, Clerk Reinerson, if I'm incorrect, but the property is appraised, and then there is, as Mr. Dorsey said, the property owners pay 50% of their share of that. And then there was questions on the process, and basically when a city right-of-way or city property is asked to be vacated, there's a petition, I believe, that is presented to the city clerk's office, and then there are notifications, and there are assessments done by the various departments, and there's a public hearing. And all of the abutting property owners within a certain radius are notified of the actions along the way. So
In that, just for the record, Mr. Bliss did reach out to me after I sent the letter and had some questions. I answered him and he was satisfied with it. He didn't express any concern with me at that time.
okay, so I'm hoping that that clarifies. The only other thing that I'm hoping that the audience understands is where this property is. It's kind of hard to tell from that picture, but hopefully we described it well enough. If you're familiar with the Bliss car lot, he's got a fence down there, and it's the property directly behind it. With that, we will entertain a motion for the business item. Scott?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I move to adopt an ordinance vacating the city's right-of-way and alley between Klein Avenue and DeKalb Street as presented.
Second.
Is there any discussion on this item?
The petition was for that area, that one first area, but because there's going to be more of the vacated alley, what will happen with that property? Does that mean that anybody else has the option to buy, or will the owners actually have the option to buy that whole
Is that the
area?
Bliss property?
So these, I believe these
Those are the lists.
four here are, so these are the Valist, and then this is another property. It's under an LLC, but it's still owned by the Valist. And then this is the Otto, the son's place. And then this is the petitioner, and then I do believe that this is Homemade Cafe. So this whole right-of-way will obviously be vacated. Upon the council's approval and upon completing the appraisal and the city being paid 50% of their portion of the right-of-way, the petitioner's right-of-way, then this will be all vacated and it'll be recorded with the county treasurer's office, and they will assess their tax roll, and each owner of these properties will now gain 50% of the width of the property. So this right here will be divided down, and that now will be adjusted to their legal description, all of this here. The only correction is that the petitioner will have to go back and have their West Sound engineer correct the legal description to make sure that it is straight across, not at an angle. And then once that's corrected, then we will move forward getting this legal description so they can take possession. So the RCW states that the petitioner is responsible for the legal description as well as paying 50%. Everybody else gets added to their legal description at no cost. The cost to them at the end is additional taxes being assessed.
And I thought I saw in the packet that there was an actual appraisal that said that there was a no value.
Right, but I don't know that that's quite sufficient, so legal counsel and I will verify all of that before we move forward, but there's some value. Yeah.
Can I just add something to that?
I will allow you, but you need to come to the microphone and state your name.
Just to clarify between my property, Holland Sons and Dick Bliss, where that line is, the property takes a dramatic downhill. So it's like my property's cliff, and and then it's a small road, and then it's the roofs of Dick Bliss, and then Holland Sons. So there's no real usage is what I'm trying to say. It's just my embankment, and then there's not even a trail anymore. There's nothing. So just to clarify that it's not like a usable road.
I'm sure that would come out in the appraisal. Is there any more discussion?
I would like to just add, I just want to say for my edification that I heard the thing, the price that each owner would pay 50%. I mean, we've all heard 50%, but that's because we're assuming that owners on the top side and the bottom side both want half of the alley. So since they'd each be getting 50% of the portion, they'd be paying 50%. It's not that they're paying 50% of the value or anything like it. So they will be paying for the complete parcel.
That's not
And-
accurate.
No, that's
That's
not
not
correct.
accurate.
Okay.
Not an
Okay.
accurate statement.
Is this person here, if they come back and say that this value, this whole piece right here is value at $100, okay? There's a lot of depreciation because you can't build whatever if it's $100. Then the state RCW states that the petitioner is required to pay 50% of that appraised value. That's it.
If they
So
get
they
the
pay
whole
the
thing, though?
city $50, and then we get it recorded with the state, the county treasurer's office, and then everybody gets that added. Nobody else has to pay anything else. That's just what
People on
RCW.
one side will pay 50% of that value, and the people on the other side would pay 50%, and the lines get adjusted to the middle of the right-of-way.
What you said, John, I understand.
Right, but that's not what Brandy said.
That's what I was trying to say.
The petitioner's paying 50% of their piece. Everyone else, it's just gonna go onto their tax rolls. They're not paying anything for that additional part.
I don't think the others can have something for free. You
Yeah.
can't gift it away. They have to pay something. It's based on the value, and the value based on the description is probably $100, but somebody, whether it's a petitioner paying both sides, or somebody has to pay 50% to us.
Not the motion in front of us.
Right, well, what they're paying for is the removal of the city's easement across that area, so they're not actually purchasing the value of the property, they're purchasing the right to take the easement off of that land. So that's the way it's.
But the point is that the property owners on one side pay 50% of that value,
Right.
and
Right.
properties on the other side pay 50%. So the Velis, if they want that, they will have to pay half of that assessed valuation.
Yeah, I don't think that's the way
not
that
right.
works.
That isn't correct?
No, it's just the petitioner, under the statute, is required to pay for the what they want.
Petitioner pays for the entire,
No, they pay for whatever, up to the
who
center
pays
line.
for the other half?
Yeah, the RCW is not provide any further payment.
Is that tied, because it's already fee simple ownership within an open right of way, right? They already, they basically have paid for that.
Right.
In the unopened right of way.
Right,
It's just not on their tax rolls, and they've become on their tax rolls.
right.
Correct,
true.
which they haven't
Yeah.
been before.
And Mr. Bond makes a good point that the city council can choose to only vacate up to the center line. You don't have to vacate the entire
Right, so-
section.
Okay, that's not the way I understand it, but you're the attorney, I'm not.
We should only just vacate up to that.
Well,
But Susan said
If we're
it's-
vacating Prospect out here, the city is responsible for covering this side of the street, and the properties on the other side is responsible for covering the other side of the street, correct? Assuming that they want it?
Assuming that they want it, I'm not sure, because if you're vacating the entire road section, and it's not going to be a road anymore, then they can take that property without payment, because of what we're doing is taking off the right of an easement, the right of a street right of way. They already own that property. We're taking away the city's right to have a road there.
Even on a platted right-of-way?
I'm not sure this is the understanding of the entire committee, because I know one of the things, speaking for myself, that we thought made sense is if the entire area of the right-of-way were to be vacated, not just to the center line, and that the property owners who are adjacent would be eligible for, obviously, the part of it that was next to their property. So in my understanding, yes, the rectangles would be divided in half, and assuming each side wanted one of those rectangles, they'd pay for that portion. Conversely, if one side didn't want any of it and the other side wanted the whole thing, my understanding is that side would then pay for the whole thing. Tonight, it sounds like only half of it would be paid for, and we're not sure who it would go to, because it would be on the tax rolls.
I'm with you, Fred, I'm confused.
Yeah, it's not the way that I've been brought up to understand.
If there's a value to the city to relinquish its interest in that property of $100, and only the triangular piece of property was interested, they would pay $50. So we would only vacate that portion, and the rest of the right-of-way would still be in city's control.
Right, so here's the RCW 3579030. So if the street or alley has been part of a dedicated public right-of-way for 25 years or more, or if the subject property or portions thereof are required at public expense, the city or town may require the owners of the property to compensate the city in an amount not to exceed the full appraised value of the area vacated. So, if the property was acquired at public expense, then that's when you can require the entire appraised value of the area to be paid by the property owners on both sides.
So if we were to purchase the property because we had plans to build something, then we're required to get compensated for that, correct? Is that what that scenario means?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just answer that one question. In this case, this property was platted 100-plus years ago, and this right-of-way was dedicated to the city.
Right.
So what rights do the city have for that piece of ground? Can we turn around and vacate it, i.e. relinquish control, sell it, whatever you want to call it?
Okay, so it said, if the street or alley has been, one of two scenarios, if it has been part of a dedicated public right-of-way for 25 years or more, which is our scenario here.
Right, which it has.
Okay. Or if it was acquired by city public expense, which is not the case. But in either scenario, the city or town may require the owners of the property abutting the street or alley to compensate the city in an amount that does not exceed the full appraised value. So the owners of the property abutting the street, plural. So it
Okay.
should be both
So
sides.
properties on both
Yes.
sides, in
Yes.
theory, the value would be split in half.
Right,
Property on one side would pay 50%, and they would get up to the center of that, and the property on the other side would pay 50%.
yeah,
And the
Yeah.
line would
No,
be
that's right.
adjusted to the middle. So,
right.
getting back to your comment, Fred, my understanding is correct, that the petitioner would be required to pay 50% of that portion of the street's value.
Right.
And the Bellis on the other side, if they were interested, would be required to pay the other 50%, assuming that they were.
But that's not what this is saying, so we have an issue.
We do.
Yeah.
We do have an issue. It's
Oh, when
incorrect information.
When we've done these in the past, I think we've done half a dozen since I've been here, we've always typically, somebody's petitioned, they've paid for their half, and the adjacent across have the option to buy, and in a number of cases, the petitioner actually purchased the 100% because they had an encroachment they were trying to clear. But the full width was compensated for at some appraised value. That was just my recollection of what
Well,
we've done in the
and-
past.
My understanding of that process, though, is that if the abutting property on the other side elects to not participate.
They don't have to.
These people could buy the entire width.
Yep.
Right. And
But they would pay the entire
Yes.
value of the width, not 50%.
even though we've been calling this one petitioner the petitioner, because 2/3 of the abutting property owners have to sign the petition in order for it to move forward,
Correct.
they become petitioners because they have signed on to the petition. So they've
They've
shown,
obligated
they've shown their
themselves.
willingness to participate and take and pay for what they have taken. It's the people who have not, who are at the other end of the alleyway that don't have to pay because they weren't involved.
But can we,
We wouldn't
we can,
vacate 50% of that portion of it.
You aren't required to do any portion of that.
Or Sue Ann can purchase the entire width of.
Right, right, that's always, as long as the city gets 100% of the value of this property, regardless of who pays it, but my understanding is initially, property owners on either side have a right to purchase 50%. If they elect not to, then the petitioner could buy it all, but
So do you think all the impacted property owners are clear on this, that they don't have to keep paying for this?
No, they're
well,
not clear.
also,
This-
in previous, like the one we did up across from the Active Club, remember where they wanted the full width? They had to pay the city for their half, but they had to buy, because the other half had a fee simple ownership. They actually had to pay from the
because
people
it
across
had
the
been
street.
previously
Because it was their fee,
vacated.
it was their fee simple ownership, so they actually had to buy the whole amount, but the property that was giving up their half, they got paid. That was that. So,
Let's say
So-
it's pre-purchase that vacation, it's,
I think
they
we need
can't
to-
get paid for
Okay,
something
we're-
that the city owns.
Right, we're getting a little conversational here, and Councilman Diener has a comment.
I'll let him finish the conversation.
I think that the information is inaccurate. I think we're all confused. I'm not sure that the property owners understand what's going on. I'm not sure why the land use committee wanted to vacate that whole area if only one area was interested in purchasing.
I can speak to that.
Okay.
I think there was a discussion about why just this portion when the entire strip is really not functional, nor did Public Works or anybody else identify a future use for that. So it was our recommendation to continue at the full length of the alleyway.
yeah, I think that came from me. It didn't make sense to vacate little pieces,
Right.
just to have the whole strip
Right.
run down the middle.
And then the ordinance itself, the second whereas references the other interested parties. So Harold and Shirley Vlist and Sue Ann Martin Smith are interested.
They're all interested in
Yeah,
in
and
buying? Okay,
And I'll let Brandy speak to this,
Interested's
but
a
I've
legal
Well-
term.
yeah.
been contacted.
Okay, Brandy?
With the new information that's been provided before me tonight, I do not feel comfortable moving forward with the adoption of this resolution, or ordinance, excuse me. And I don't know that the petitioners, the other two petitioners, understand their full obligation. So I would ask that the council maybe continue this item to the 26th, or maybe even the first meeting in December, so staff and legal counsel can get together, review the RCW, and see what how we should move forward. That's my recommendation.
So how do we continue the motion, because we have a motion?
We do.
A council member can make a motion, continue, and then second it, and then that's it. And then once,
Do we do a date certain?
I'm sorry, yeah, continue with the date certain. So you can either choose the 26th. I'm not quite sure that a week is going to be enough time to get everybody together and have some meaningful conversation. So I would propose that the council continue the meeting to December 10th with possible action at that time.
Madam Mayor?
I would move to continue this issue to the December 10th business meeting of the council, 2019.
Second.
Okay, there is a motion on the floor that has been seconded to continue this business item until the December 10th meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you.
So when December 10th comes at the meeting, the motion will already be on the floor, and then you'll go straight into discussion.
And I'm sure you'll remind us of that.
With all these changes, will this necessitate the need for another public hearing if there's new information? Just making
And-
sure we're following the right processes.
And if I may, just to maybe help streamline this a little bit next time, is if we could, at the next work study, touch on this again,
Okay,
just to get an update.
right, that's
you.
next week.
Excuse me, Councilmember Dean, so next Tuesday, you want an update just on the progress of staff and legal counsel?
Yeah, I mean, I presume at that point you'll have reached out again if needed to the adjacent owners, and then we'll have a better understanding that we can verbalize as to what the process is. Okay.
Thank you.
And I would also just like to make clear the process for the vacation and the purchase. I'd just like to hear it again, how it works at the work study. Because right now, I thought I knew, and now I don't think I know.
Not that I'm opposed to another public hearing, but I guess I'm a little bit confused. We held a public hearing on the concept of vacating the street. The mechanics of how that happens is almost a separate issue.
That's why I said, it's just, if anything that we learned tonight would necessitate,
Yeah,
one,
I
if
mean, if
something
it
wasn't
does, but
valid,
the-
that's all. My point was, let's just make sure
The
we're
purpose
following that.
was to find out if anyone would object to us vacating this property. I'm not opposed
But
to
if
another
people
public
didn't
hearing,
know
it's
what
just
their
a
potential
notification requirement.
obligation could be,
But that's the mechanics of how do we transfer the ownership, if you will, to those property owners. I suspect that the only time, and correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Attorney, is that if we did get objections as a result of our continuation, then that might trigger, wait a minute, folks, we've got more concern than we thought we had. But I'm not opposed to having another
harmless.
public hearing, it's just the notification requirements.
It may be harmless to have another public hearing because people may have chosen to testify or not testify based on the packet in front of us,
Yeah.
which,
So I say, I'm not opposed to it, I'm
confusing.
just trying to get it clarified in my mind.
I think Clerk Reinderson understands her charge at this point. Okay. We will move on to business item 7B, which is the adoption of an ordinance adopting the comprehensive plan amendments that were presented this evening. Mr. Bond.
Yes, thank you. Before you tonight is an ordinance to adopt the 2019 Comprehensive Plan amendments. The amendments as presented during the public hearing section of tonight's meeting include updating the city's transportation improvement plan, adopting the Bethel-Sedgwick Corridor Plan as an appendix to the comprehensive plan, including the appendices associated with that study, and finally, an update to Chapter 2, the center's portion of Chapter 2 in the land use element. And the staff recommendation is to approve the ordinance as presented, but before you vote on that, if you have any questions about the changes we made since last work study at your request, please let me know, and I'm happy to talk to those. Thanks.
Councilor
Madam Mayor
Gainer.
Pro Tem, I move to adopt an ordinance adopting the 2019 Comprehensive Plan amendments as submitted.
Okay, is there discussion? As the motion maker, you get to go first, Scott.
Well, I want to compliment staff again on a process that I thought was well done. We had multiple looks and opportunities at it. Our comments were well received. We had some last-minute changes. Only, I think, a week ago is when we met. And those were incorporated, so I think we've got a good product in front of us. And I think for me, it's exciting to see that the Bethel-Sedgwick Corridor Study Plan is part of the comp plan now. It's a good step to take. Well done.
Any other comments or concerns? Any discussion? More discussion? I'm sorry, but I get in the weeds sometimes.
No.
Nick knows that. This one paragraph says the court.
Where are you?
I'm on it's page 38 of our packet. And it's the last paragraph under vision. Well, actually, the third paragraph, I just kind of noted, it said, Tremont Avenue will be improved and widened with sidewalk, street trees, and landscape. I think we've done that.
That
So
is
do we just
correct.
want to leave it in, or what?
If you go to the red line version of the plan, that was not a section that we had proposed to touch.
Change,
I
right.
realize that chapter needs to be updated, but that wasn't what we set out to do. And when we looked at the entirety of Chapter 2, there's a ton of things like that we could have
Okay, so that's my
cleaned up.
second one too, is the last paragraph says the corridor from Pottery east to Sydney consists primarily of single-family residents and small clinics. And, you know, we've got Orchard on the Green in there, we've got about 4 different apartment complexes in there. So it didn't seem to me that it was primarily single-family residences. But it's,
Existed in the past?
Yeah,
it
that's
was.
carryover all the way back from the 2008 plan.
Right.
And when we I think the Tremont plan at this point is a fairly low priority of all of our centers because it's mostly developed, but when we do refresh that area, we'll look at it more comprehensively in the future.
When is the next the total comprehensive plan going to be looked at?
So our next deadline for the periodic update is June 30th of 2024.
Okay.
So we're going to begin with the buildable lands work, I think, in 2021, 2022, and then we'll be writing the plan mostly in 2023.
Okay. So when we vote on the comprehensive plan amendments before us, we understand that some of this information in the Tremont section is a little dated and would be updated with our primary
Talked
comprehensive
about
plan.
that at land use.
So, okay. Are there any other comments or discussions on the motion? Okay. The motion before us, and we will be voting on acceptance of the 2019 comprehensive plan amendments. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So that is taken care of. And we will move on now to business item 7C. Boy, you guys gave us a lot of paper today. Well, some of us got a lot of paper. And this is Finance Director Crocker's. It's the adoption of an ordinance authorizing the maximum capacity of local sales and use tax related to House Bill 1406. Noah?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. During the 2019 regular session, the Washington State Legislature approved and the Governor signed substitute House Bill 1406. House Bill 1406 allows counties and cities to authorize to impose a sales tax to fund various housing and services for persons whose income is at or below 60% of the median income for the city. The tax is basically a transfer of a portion of the state's existing sales tax to the city. It is not an additional tax and will not impact the consumer. The use of the tax is for the acquisition, construction, and rehabilitation of affordable housing or facilities providing supportive housing, for the operations and maintenance costs of affordable or supportive housing, and for providing rental assistance to tenants. The City Council took the first step and adopted Resolution 02319 on August 13th, declaring the city's intent to adopt legislation to levy the maximum capacity of the tax. This ordinance tonight fulfills the requirements under House Bill 1406 by adopting legislation to authorize the maximum capacity of the tax. The City of Port Orchard estimates it could receive approximately $42,000 annually by adopting this ordinance. Staff recommends approving the ordinance authorizing the maximum capacity of local sales and use taxes to fund affordable and supportive housing in accordance with substitute House Bill 1406.
Thank you. Jay?
I move to adopt an ordinance which constitutes the required legislation to authorize the maximum capacity of the local sales and use tax for affordable housing in accordance with House Bill 1406.
Second.
And discussion? As the motion maker, you can go first.
We still haven't decided on where the funds will be allocated toward. Is that correct? We're still in that discussion.
At the last council meeting, council voted to allocate the funds for the Kitsap Community Resource.
Okay, but we didn't have to put it in this motion.
No, so
in
this
here.
is the next step.
That's what I
So
was wondering.
we did the intent, now we adopted legislation. The city is also working with and developing a contract with the Kitsap Housing Resource and laying out the program parameters of what that would, what the reporting would be, what we would get for the value of the money, and when those funds would be delivered.
Putting the cart before the horse, so thank you.
Yeah, so I would expect that work to come back to the council maybe February, March of 2020.
Okay, thank you.
Noah, while you're discussing it, at the last meeting, last time we discussed this, we talked about the timing of receipt of the revenue. Do you have any more information on that?
Yeah, for the full council, we discussed this at the Finance Committee. What we expect is if we take action tonight, there is a lag with Department of Revenue, so there's a 30-day lag when the tax would become effective. So we expect the tax would go into effect for January, with retailers then reporting to the state their sales tax revenue in February, with then those revenues being received back to the city by March. So there's quite a lag, but we could expect to receive some of that tax revenue by March of 2020.
Is there any way we can push it up to get Christmas?
I don't think it takes effect until,
Yes, it wouldn't.
right, because it's based on 12/31/19 sales tax numbers. Remembering that that's a constant, that that amount will not go up, but it will go down if our sales tax revenue is decreased. But it's also capped at the December of 2019's numbers. So I don't think we can, right. Right. Is there any more discussion? The other thing, just to keep in mind, when we do enter into the agreement with KCR, and there will probably be a time element in that agreement, but we're not locked into that for the duration of the 20 years. So we have a motion, and which has been seconded, to adopt an ordinance authorizing the maximum capacity of local sales and use tax related with House Bill 1406. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, no? Thank you. And we will move on to our business item 7D, and this is an adoption of an ordinance approving memorandums of understanding with Teamsters representing the Public Works employees, municipal court employees, and police support staff. And Debbie, that would be you.
Good evening. So this first item for your consideration tonight has to do with our Public Works, police support, and court staff. City policies regarding jury duty pay allows employees to keep the check they receive from the jurisdiction when they complete jury service. Collective bargaining trumps city policy when an issue is addressed in the union collective bargaining agreement and also in policy. All three of the Teamsters collective bargaining agreements provide that when the employee serves jury duty, they are required to turn over the jury duty check to the city in order to offset the wages that we continue to pay while they serve as a juror. That bargaining language, though, is contrary to what city policy is. So the attached memorandum of understanding is to update those three contracts to reflect current policy, which would allow the employee to keep the jury duty check, which just makes it easier on everybody. In addition, the collective bargaining agreement covering the Public Works employee contains language that could be interpreted as being contrary to certain requirements of the Fair Labor Standards Act, also known as the FLSA, and the Washington Minimum Wage Act. The MOU for the Public Works employees also addresses that subject and is intended to clarify the language that would indicate both the city and the Teamsters' intent to comply with federal and state law. The Teamsters Union has reviewed the proposals and have given their consent.
Cindy?
I move to adopt an ordinance which authorizes the Mayor Pro Tem to sign a memorandum of understanding with Teamsters Local 589 representing Public Works employees to revise language in Articles 8.4 and 15.1, a memorandum of understanding with Teamsters Local 589 representing municipal court employees to revise the language in Article 15.1, and a memorandum of understanding with Teamsters Local 589 representing police support staff to revise the language in Article 15.1 with respect to each of the respective collective bargaining agreements.
Second it.
Okay. Cindy, would you like any discussion?
No.
Council? Scott?
What's the typical jury duty pay?
It's so
It
little.
varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and I do not know what Kitsap's local rate is.
It's
I think it
very,
was-
very small.
I think it was last time it was $10 when I served last time, about a year ago.
I think the concept behind that is to cover their expenses, basically mileage. So to ask them to give us their expense check just doesn't make a whole lot of
It
sense.
doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
And it usually comes intermixed with a mileage rate, which is the employees to keep. And so you get into this minutia of splitting small dollar amounts, and the amount of staff time that goes into to do that is much more than the amount of the check.
So the city policy makes a great deal more sense than the Teamsters,
Correct.
but there's nothing we can do about it.
Yes,
Fix
approve
it.
this.
Something about it.
With the MOU is to fix it. It was just missed during negotiations. This is really just housekeeping.
Okay,
Yeah, we fixed their contracts.
okay. But it was implied that we couldn't. 'cause of the 3
We have a motion
Yeah.
and a second for the adoption of an ordinance approving memorandums of understanding with the Teamsters representing public works employees, municipal court employees, and police staff support. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So, thank you. So now we will go on to our next business item, which is adoption of an ordinance approving memorandums of understanding with the Police Guild representing patrol and the Police Guild representing sergeants. Debbie?
So the saga continues. 2 more contracts, same language regarding jury duty. So the proposal in front of you tonight is to fix the language in the guild contracts, one representing patrol, one representing sergeants, on the issue of the jury duty check and allowing the employee to keep the jury duty pay. In addition, the Washington State had adopted a new paid sick leave law effective January 1, 2018. The law has been interpreted to disallow employee policies that may act to penalize an employee for the use of that paid sick leave. City staff has determined that a provision in the Port Orchard Police Guild collective bargaining agreements could be interpreted to be such a penalty, and the parties have agreed to update the collective bargaining agreements to address this potential issue. Therefore, the memorandums of understanding in front of you tonight also address the concern over potentially penalize an employee for using their state-protected sick leave.
Mr. Clausen?
Mayor Pro Tem, I move to adopt an ordinance which authorizes the Mayor Pro Tem to sign a memorandum of understanding with the Police Guild representing patrol officers and a memorandum of understanding with the Police Guild representing sergeants to revise the language in Articles 10.7.2 and 14.1 of each of the respective collective bargaining agreements.
Second.
And Mr. Clausen, did you want to have any discussion on that or lead the discussion?
No, I think it was pretty well explained.
Any other discussion from council? Seeing none, we will move to adopt an ordinance approving memorandums of understanding with the Police Guild representing patrol and the Police Guild representing sergeants. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And that passes. And now we will move on to another item for Ms. Reinerson, and that's the adoption of our Lodging Tax Advisory Committee's recommendations.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Pro Tem, Council. So on October 1st, 2019, the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee heard presentations from applicants who are requesting funds for 2020. And on October 2nd, the committee met to discuss the applications and to provide council a recommendation of the fund allocations. During the October 15, 2019 work study session, council discussed the committee's recommendation of $100,000, and the committee recommends that the city foot ferry services be allocated $2,500, Fathoms of Fun festival events for marketing, $21,000, Kitsap Mustang Club, $2,500, Port Orchard Bay Street Associations for events, tourism, marketing, $7,500, Port Orchard Bay Street Association Marketing and Events, $15,000. Port Orchard Chamber of Commerce Explore Port Orchard Coalition Tourism Marketing, $12,500. Port Orchard Chamber of Commerce Seagull Calling Festival and Events, $3,000. Port Orchard Chamber of Commerce Visitor Center, $10,000. Saints Car Club The Cruise, $3,000. Sydney Museum and Arts Association Marketing, $5,000. And Visit Kitsap, $18,000. It's my understanding at the work study session, council had no objections with the committee's recommendation. Therefore, staff recommends adoption of the resolution approving the lodging tax recommendations for 2020 as presented.
I'll go.
We're looking at you.
I understand that. Mayor Pro Tem, I move to adopt a resolution adopting the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee's recommendation for the 2020 funding allocation as presented.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the LTAC allocation this year?
There's just a scrivener's error under POPSA, marketing events. It says marking.
Sydney.
Is there any other discussion?
Can you remind me who the committee members were? I know it was the Days Inn and Comfort Inn.
Right.
And who were the other two?
And the other two was Keith Wishness from the Saints Car Club, and also, just dropped out. Matt Murphy from Chamber.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the lodging tax allocation? Seeing none, it has been moved and seconded, and we will be voting to adopt a resolution adopting the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee's recommendation for the 2020 funding allocation. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
A little after the fact, but I would like to just thank Brandy for all of her hard work on making sure all the herding cats is never an easy task, and she did a great job.
She's very good at that. Our next item of business is a adoption of a resolution approving an interlocal agreement with the city of Bremerton for its purchase and sale of water assets within the 580 zone. And Mr. Darcy.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. In accordance with Chapter 3943 RCW, the Interlocal Cooperation Act, and being a function of the overall water campus improvements needed to repeal the current water moratorium within the city of Port Orchard, which is scheduled for the November 26, 2019 meeting, and in conjunction, oh wait, I skipped a line. I need my glasses. Within the city of Port Orchard's retail service area 580 zone, ordinance number 02019, 02019A, and 03919, currently scheduled for November 26, 2019, and in conjunction with the pending First Amendment to the 2007 reimbursement agreement for utility system improvements between the city of Port Orchard and McCormick Communities, LLC, and a pending new agreement between the city of Bremerton and McCormick Communities. The city of Port Orchard and the city of Bremerton have now agreed to the terms and conditions by which certain water-related assets owned by the city of Port Orchard will be transferred to the city of Bremerton through the purchase of water from the city of Bremerton. It is anticipated that once this interlocal agreement, which is attached, is approved by the Port Orchard City Council, the Bremerton City Council will provide their needed approval prior to the November 26, 2019 City Council or City of Port Orchard regular meeting. Please find attached the executed request for South Kitsap Fire Support letter dated October 10th, 2019 as well. Staff recommends that the City Council adopt a resolution thereby authorizing the Mayor Pro Tem to execute an interlocal agreement with the City of Bremerton for the purchase and sale of water assets within the 580 zone.
Cindy?
I move to adopt a resolution thereby authorizing the Mayor Pro Tem to execute an interlocal agreement with the City of Bremerton for the purchase and sale of water assets within the 580 zone.
Second.
Discussion?
This is amazing that we've gotten to this point, and I'm so happy that we were able to, manage this. It really is incredible that we have this agreement before us, or almost. So thank you for everyone for all the hard work, and for coming up with that great idea.
I concur with what Cynthia said. I think you guys did a lot of work for this, and I think this is a great accomplishment. I have a little question, though, on page 124, water value 3.4. So it looks like they're charging us 90% of the retail value as they're calculating in terms for us giving them the asset, if I have that correct. But why didn't they charge us a wholesale rate? Are there wholesale rates in water? You know, from a layperson's viewpoint, 5% off the retail doesn't sound like a great bargain.
Well, I think it's important to recognize that City Bremerton staff has a city council as well. And as we negotiated the many points of this, we had points that we would not bend on. Their staff had points that they would not bend on. And this, quite honestly, was an issue that we started fairly hard on, that we wanted wholesale rates, not retail rates. But that created problems for them in a number of ways, utility billing, setting up separate accounts. And so there were issues that they knew they wouldn't get through their own council. At the end of the day, what we were able to do, and the key thing that both sides came together, was we really looked at the value of the assets over this interim period, and we've got it set up so that at the end of the day, nobody's going to have to owe anybody any money. And that was really a lot of the back and forth, and trying to, like, for example, we hadn't even thought at one point about the 8-inch water main and the fire hydrant for McCormick Village Park, that we hadn't included that value. There were little things that we were able to add that, we were like this at one point and we got to this point. So the fact that we're at a 95% of a, retail rate, I don't want to say it's immaterial, but in the greater scheme of trying to just balance it so that we're just exchanging water for assets, I think that, again, as you had said, we came a long way from the three-legged stool, well, plus the fire district sitting on that stool. We have to get this agreement with Bremerton, Bremerton's agreement with McCormick, and our agreement with McCormick. And those are all finally happening. And at the end of the day, we're going to be receiving new assets. Bremerton's going to be receiving, existing assets that have a certain current value. They were built in the 90s. And, at the end of the day, everybody's going to walk away happy.
Is there more discussion from council? Or questions? Seeing none, we will be voting on adopting a resolution approving an interlocal agreement with the City of Bremerton for the purchase and sale of water assets within the 580 zone. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is a major accomplishment.
Just one leg.
Yeah, that's one leg. I'm looking for the bottom of this pile. Okay. We will be moving on to an adoption of a resolution amending the Port Orchard Municipal Code, Chapter 10.08, to update speed limits within the city of Port Orchard. Nick?
Yes, in September, the City Council passed a resolution amending our speed limit resolution, and that was because we hadn't established speed limits in some of the areas we annexed a number of years ago, and the signs had been posted, but our resolution wasn't up to date. After adopting that resolution, Mark's very detailed Public Works crew noticed that we had two other discrepancies that needed to be fixed, and one of those was Bay Street coming into the city. The signage that is out there posted by WashDOT says 45 miles per hour. Our resolution says 50. We need to correct that. Also on Lippert at Pottery, we have a school zone, And when we adopted the new resolution, we said that it's 20 miles per hour at all times. It should say 20 miles per hour when the beacon is flashing. So those two very minor corrections are needed, and we prepared a resolution to implement those changes. The staff recommendation and I believe the Public Works Director's recommendation are to approve the resolution as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Council? John?
I move that the city council adopt the proposed resolution amending chapter 10.08 Port Orchard Municipal Code to update speed limits within the city of Port Orchard.
Second.
Okay, is there discussion?
Cut and dry.
Yeah.
Pretty self-explanatory. It has been moved and seconded to adopt a resolution amending Port Orchard Municipal Code, Chapter 10.08, to update speed limits within the city of Port Orchard. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nope. Thank you. Okay, now we're moving on to our agenda, or our business item. Approval of an ingress, egress, and utility easement agreement with Joyce Elizabeth Bonfui across tax parcel, and I won't read the number. Mark, that's your item, I believe.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. The City of Port Orchard owns, via annexation, the property associated with the McCormick Meadows Storm Drainage Facility, which is tax parcel 052301-201220005. An adjacent property to the south, owned by Joyce Elizabeth Bonfoy, which is tax parcel 05230130022005, is landlocked, and she is requesting legal access across the same 60-foot area that an existing ingress, egress, and utility easement occupies for the benefit of the neighboring properties to the west and to the south, or to the north, and the Pontius parcels to the south that the city authorized access for in 2015. The valuable consideration for granting access to the easement is the Bonfoys are required to participate within the existing joint use and maintenance agreement that the neighboring properties to the west and north are party to and have already executed and recorded and amended, and that's attached. So staff recommends that the City Council authorize Mayor Pro Tem to execute an easement agreement with Joyce Elizabeth Bonfoy for an ingress, egress, and utility easement across the easterly 324.6 feet of the south 60 feet of Lot 8, which is tax parcel 052301-201220005.
Scott?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I move to authorize the Mayor Pro Tem to execute an easement agreement with Joyce Elizabeth Bonfoy for an ingress, egress, and utility easement across the easterly 324.6 feet of the south 60 feet of Lot 8, for tax parcel 052301-2-012-2005.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
I don't have any.
Fred, did you?
I have an easy map question for Mark. Where it says 2 or 002 on the map, that's the Bonfui parcel. I'm assuming it's not labeled by name. It must be, but
Exhibit A.
yeah, the one that's on the overhead.
Yeah, the 002.
Okay.
So I think it's important to also recognize that this won't be the last time this happens. For some reason, Kitsap County decided to landlock quite a number of parcels that come down through that are all, and I'm not pointing fingers.
I can help.
There's a number of parcels that are north of the future high school property, and they're landlocked. And so I don't know if their intention was to come off Figley or Sunny Slope some way, but when you look at a map, you can see that there's quite a number of parcels. So in the years to come, I think there'll be more people as they are trying to sell these properties that are undeveloped, But unfortunately, now somebody to the west, they're gonna have to get an easement from Bonfoy or Pontius to get to our easement. So it's a bit of a problem that is not yet ready to go away. But, you know, the good news is we have at least our process established. First, you have to participate in the road maintenance agreement, then you get access to the easement that we got simply when we annexed McCormick, and then we ended up taking over that parcel that was associated with also the Figley Road reconstruction, and that's where Lone Bear comes off. So this isn't going to be the last that we hear of Lone Bear Lane Southwest.
Thank you. Is there more discussion by council? Seeing none, we'll be voting on approval of an ingress, egress, and utility easement agreement with Joyce Elizabeth Bonfoy across tax parcel 052-301-2-012-2005. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Thank you. We will move on to our last business item, which is the approval of the October 15th Council's Work Study Session. Jay?
Mayor Pro Tem recommend approval of the City Council Work Study Session meetings minutes as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from the work study session of October 15th. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And one abstention. Okay, we will move on. I don't know, it's the next agenda item, reports from council committees. And John, we'll start with finance.
Sure. We had a finance committee meeting this evening, and essentially we went over kind of the revenues. I'm happy to report that our sales tax is continuing to come in at a healthy rate. Right now, we're just under 5.5% above budget, so that's good news. And our REIT funds, our real estate excise tax funds, have been coming in consistently strong, so we're doing well in that area as well. All of the various account balances look healthy and strong, no issues there. And then we just kind of went through a summary of a lot of positions that are open and kind of changing around, and just kind of reaffirmed where we were with those. And we did talk, Nick presented a concept of having some interns, so we're looking forward to seeing that come forward for approval, that we'll be able to not only take advantage of the interns, but they will also be able to gain some valuable experience in participating with us on different projects. So.
John, did you have any discussion on I-976 and, you know, when that would?
We did.
Information.
We did very briefly. It's just simply acknowledging the fact that it's about $200,000 a year for the TBD, and we talked about at the beginning of the year when council has their retreat and talks about committee assignments. I know Beck has brought up the possible creation of a transportation committee, where Noah suggested that that would be a great opportunity to look at how we would move forward with that. We talked briefly about one option that we have is using sales tax, but that requires a voter approval, and just how we would look at that. But that, we kind of agreed that would be a subject for that committee to tackle and look at it for more future. We did do a budget adjustment for adding 200 and some thousand primarily for some street paving, which basically we're back at status quo. So we kind of plugged that, but we're not really going to gain any on much. So
Thank you.
Talk briefly about the legal challenges and be watching that to see if they place a stay on that while, while that process unfolds.
I'll stay on the initiative.
What's that?
I'll stay on the vote results.
Correct.
It's my understanding that the initiative would go into effect December 15th, was that correct? And that there's a possible stay to that because of the legal actions.
That's my report.
Okay, and that's what we talked about. The Economic Development and Tourism Committee, which was scheduled for November 18th, will be, I don't believe we'll be having that. We will be meeting the second Monday in December. We don't have a lot of agenda items, and the mayor will still be out of town, and we were hoping to have a report on the Public Facilities District and the Community Center. And so we'll be waiting and meeting on the second Monday of December. So we'll go down to utilities. That would be Cindy.
We were supposed to have a meeting on November 18th. That has been rescheduled for December 16th, when there'll be more items on the agenda.
Okay. Sewer Advisory.
We met and mostly discussed the budget and the capital improvements and that sort of thing. Our next meeting is February 19th, 6:30 p.m. here at City Hall.
And land use.
So we don't have our next meeting scheduled yet, and it might be work dependent. I don't know if we have anything lined up yet. We did have a meeting on November 4th at DCD at 1 o'clock where we talked about a handful of items. We talked about a request by a member of the McCormick Woods Common Area Committee to have a trail crossing from McCormick Woods to McCormick Village Park. And so we talked about how this was probably not the best time to be asking for that, but that maybe during a developer's agreement negotiation, we could look at trying to put in an improvement there that would allow for safe pedestrian crossing from McCormick Woods to the Village Park. The next item that we talked about was the comp plan stuff that we adopted tonight, so I won't go into that. We also talked about the Shoreline Master Program and the Public Participation Plan. That's a scope of work that's going to go out till 2021. One of the key elements of that will be a discussion of climate resiliency. So that'll be a new and perhaps challenging element of the SMP update. But really the focus of the discussion was how we're getting this program visible to the public for their ability to comment. The next two items were sort of an advanced discussion before they go to the Planning Commission. The first was about a trees retention and canopy retention code. Snohomish County has done a rather innovative job on developing some code that Port Orchard is looking at. It's a code that's based on some GIS analysis, and it looks pretty innovative. We also talked about some potential rezones that are going to the Planning Commission for consideration. I think there were 3 rezones that we were looking at. And then item number 6 was a discussion of traffic impact fees. And we really talked about how we should be considering fees due to the relationship with our transit services, what options may exist, and whether we're really ripe for it at this moment. But we're also looking for a little more information at the next Land Use Committee meeting, whenever that is to occur, from the consultant. And then the last item was a parks plan where we were really talking about being mindful of what additional scoping may be needed as a result of the event center that we are looking to have built someday. Did I miss anything, guys?
No, I don't think so.
Any questions? Thank you.
Lodging tax.
October next year.
Okay. And Cindy's real busy time of year, chimes and lights.
Yes, so we are moving ahead with the event. I'm happy to say that we have all of the trees in place downtown, and it already looks beautiful. But of the 58 trees, we've actually sold 56. So it's just amazing. And I'm so grateful for the businesses and individuals, organizations that have come forward to sponsor a tree. It's just very
a happy time in Port Orchard. So we just have 2 trees left. They are trees without power, but I actually think that we'll have them all sold within a short time. We're working on the advertising and the details for the event, December 7th. I'm hoping all of you will be able to be there, main stage at 5 o'clock. In addition to that, I think we need to schedule the neighborhood light tour for the council, if that's possible, and work on that.
Cindy, when are we going to decorate the council's tree?
This week or next, and I didn't have an exact time set, but I can send an email out. I was actually going to try to get down there and get the lights on as soon as I can when it's not raining. But I'll send an email to all. How can we, I'd like to set up a time for the holiday light tour if you all would like to do that this year. The neighborhoods really seem to enjoy it when we get out there and take a peek.
Mm-hmm.
Brandy, is that something you can work on? Thank you.
We will go to outside agencies. Jay, do you want to talk about the KRCC retreat? Or no?
Well, it was a very interesting experience for me because it was really my first experience with how the impact on the Growth Management Act affected us getting ready also for 2014 and 2050. And basically, it came down to an exercise of looking at where growth would occur within the various areas of the county and how the elected officials and participants saw that in conjunction with the plan coming together. I wouldn't say infamous, it was actually kind of interesting Lego idea of putting, Legos with businesses. You had a certain amount of Legos that represented business activities. And quite frankly, none of the 3 groups, North, South, or Central, came out too different from how the plans were looking in 2040, 2050. So everybody's kind of is on board with kind of a realization that you can predict where you want the growth to go. Doesn't necessarily mean that the growth will end up in those areas. So I would say, and with further comment from yourself, Mayor Pro Tem, or from Nick, that it was moving ahead and John was there also, representing his position at Transit. I think it's moving forward at a steady clip with a lot of good planning going forward. John?
No, I concur.
What was I going to say? Oh, what I was going to say is they had large maps, but they had some, I don't know, are they 11 by 17 or something, showing where population is now, what the tree canopy is now, and where we would expect sea level rise over time. And I brought a set of those back, and I believe Nick has them in his office, if anyone is interested in looking at that. Yeah. Yeah, I thought they might be particularly interested at the land use, and I know that they were going to look a lot better in Nick's office than on my dining room table. So I brought those back so that everyone could take a look at those. The other thing that I would mention on KRCC is the legislative reception is this Thursday. If you want to come to the newly electeds part at 5, or the other part I think starts at 5:45 or something like that. Yeah, and there are several councils have several new members on them this year, so the first part should also be well attended. Do we have any other outside agency reports? I can't think of any right now. So we will move on to, the mayor does not have a report tonight, except that it's sunny and beautiful wherever I'm sure he is. And so we'll go through our report of the department head, starting with you, Mark.
Yeah, so about 10 minutes ago, I had nothing to report, and now I have 5 items to report. So, first off, this is like what, week 2 post Mike leaving. So we're struggling to replace a very qualified assistant city engineer. We're still searching, but we're muddling forward with that. I also wanted to mention that I-976, that when you think about what's happening there, don't just relate it to transportation. I'm also on the Public Works Board, and we're grappling with it as well because we know the legislature is going to start looking for shiny little pots of money, and other traditional funding sources are going to get raided that aren't transportation as a consequence to it. So this isn't just a transportation issue. This is an infrastructure issue, infrastructure crisis. So unfortunately, we knew that was going to pass, and I just don't think people, when they cast that ballot for a $30 tab, really truly understood how deep that was going to go to infrastructure in general. I'm talking water, sewer, transportation. I'd also advise, when Councilman Diener was talking about the crosswalk issue at Clifton, there was a lawsuit that ultimately came against the county, even though they had no culpability on Clear Creek or on Central Valley Road 5 or 6 years ago. It was like a $6 million settlement. There's now a new case dealing with Clear Creek Road. So I think it's important that everybody, read that article and look at, just understand the items that the plaintiff is looking towards. And whenever we have crosswalk conversations, we need to keep those in the back of our mind. Are we going to mark or are we not going to mark? I think it's just important to educate yourselves on that. Legislative reception. I was going to be there, but Harry has surgery tomorrow, and so he's going to be on Percocet Thursday, so I don't think I should leave him alone. And then this is an emerging new issue. I don't know exactly what's happening with the electrical down on the Marquee, but it doesn't necessarily look good. So fire marshal's involved, or the fire authority, and so we're trying to manage it, but I couldn't, since you mentioned it, at some point you need to know that we are struggling a bit with some antiquated electrical that the fire marshal might be saying, no, we can't plug into it. So we're looking at options like LED. Can we just do some GFI outlets with LED lights for now and whatever, but I needed to not let you just think that everything's honky-dory, because it just emerged today. So you've been notified, Council Member Lucarelli.
Can we have candles?
Candles? Yeah, the little taverns. Anyway, we're trying to work through it.
Not without a permit.
Back in the day.
Nothing for me tonight, thank you.
Nothing from you.
Generators.
Yeah, I've got one announcement. We were successful in getting a Department of Commerce grant for $50,000 to do a downtown plan and planned action EIS. We received notice of that. The official notice came last week, and we've already got an RFP posted. We will be doing, I think the RFP closes on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and I need some volunteers to sit on a selection committee on December 5th, 6th, or 9th, depending on availability for interviews. I think that some on the Land Use Committee expressed interest in that, but I probably need 2 council members, and I'll be talking to the Planning Commission about this as well. The project would be to hire a consultant to write a sub-area plan and a planned action EIS. This is under House Bill 1923, which is all about housing and trying to just increase the supply of housing to try to deal with affordability issues. And by doing a planned action EIS, you're essentially reviewing the plan so that when the individual projects come in, you don't have to do environmental review on them again. And so it's a more proactive way to develop a plan and hopefully build in some of the things that the county is doing with the courthouse and what we're trying to do with the community center, and to put all of that in the plan as well so that it won't have to go through an extra layer of review at a later date. So if you're interested in that, please let me know. Thank you.
Sharon?
Nothing for me tonight.
Matt or Chief?
Well, I don't have 5 things like Mark does, but no, I just want to let you know that we're still steadily humming along downstairs and doing really well and doing good work. And we had a little bit of excitement last weekend that was in the paper today, but people are doing really well. So you should be proud of your police department. Again, thank you for allowing me to be there.
Can you give us a hint what we missed?
Yeah, we had a shooting over off of Sedgwick.
Wow.
I missed that.
Guess I need to read the paper.
I missed that.
Thank you. Brandy? Okay. So, I'm going down my checklist, and I think we're to our second citizen comments. If there's anyone in the audience, Jerry, that would like to comment. Nope, the microphone's going to have to go back down.
Sorry, I get stiff sitting. First of all, I want to thank the city for this was the very first year that a man with a blower came up Kitsap Street and blew all the leaves that were at least on the sidewalk and on the outside grassy area into the street for the machine that comes up the street and cleans the streets. And that was very, very nice because I hadn't gotten down there this year. And but the maples across the street have already started blowing across on my side of the street. So just letting you know on that one. And then going out of town, there is I think it's a 45-mile-per-hour speed limit sign that is being hidden again because of bamboo. Just thought I would let you know. On the water, going out. Oh, okay, well, it's not showing anymore. And senior moment. I guess I forgot what I was going to say on the third. I had 3 things, but it's left my head, so thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Are there any other citizen comments this evening?
Heidi Fenton. So fireworks will be delayed for another time because I thought we're going to talk about that today, or we're going to have like a fire person come in and talk.
It
Was
was
that-
not on the scheduled agenda.
Oh, okay, because I thought it was like November 12th, or we talked about it 2 weeks ago and delayed it. So anyway, obviously it's not. So that will still come up another time. So I was just curious because that was a big deal, the fireworks, and if we're going to ban some and all that kind of stuff. And then the other thing is, this was the Independent, and it was on November 1st, and it was talking about, the community center and all that kind of stuff and money. And then I like how the mayor said, both will include input from the community, he said. And you guys know this article because you've all read it. And so what my concern is, being here in the city, I feel like there's not very many people involved in their vote or, hearing things. I feel like a lot of things just get passed with just it's in a small group. And there's so much developing going on down here. And so I'm thinking, well, how does the community really know about stuff that's going on and, hear about stuff and put their input? Besides just these, of course they have to come to hear and, put their input and listen to what's going on. But a lot of people just don't read the Independent or get it. And there's not too much information even downtown going and, going to a restaurant or, I don't know, you don't really get that much input. And people don't really just look online either. And so I thought, and I know that Jerry agrees with this, and I was talking to Lynn Olson, and the high school got a little reader board, and it doesn't have to be big, but I thought it'd be so cool to have a reader board, electronical one right here by City Hall that displays so much information, and there's so many people that go by here, and then I think people can, see it as they're, slow through traffic, And I just thought it would be a good idea, another way to get information out to the community so they, feel more of a part of it and they have their input to say. Thank you. So I don't know what you do with that, talk about it and then put it to a public hearing or whatever. And if you want me to go research it and see how much it's gonna cost or do whatever, I will be more than happy to do all that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else for the good of the council or the good of the city?